Hi, it's Ashwin here. A content warning before we begin. Today's episode will contain discussions of suicide, including a story about a method of suicide. If you don't think you're up to listening, please don't put yourself through it. And if you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek help. You can call Lifeline anytime on 13 11 14. This is Help Me, I'm a Comedian. I'm Ashwin Segkar and my co-host is psychologist Dr. Rachel Hannam. Each week on Help Me, I'm a Comedian, Rachel helps a comedian to unpack the psychological struggles that both haunt them but also drive them to pursue work in comedy. Aaron Pratt is in this situation and he has a pretty tough story to share. Aaron, welcome.
Thanks for having us, man.
Why did you have to leave home at 17?
Yeah, I would have been 16 going on 17. I was never like a violent bully type dude, but I had a bit of a physical confrontation with my father, which was my stepfather. I was being an absolute idiot. I was just frustrated, going through teenage things. And when he's not your genetic father, there's already a bit of tension there. And he was doing things to try and steer me in the right direction, but I couldn't see forest from the trees, and I thought he was just trying to be dominant, and I just cracked one night. We had a fist fight. When I say fist fight, he's like a burly mechanic that lifts engines. I'm a student that lifts pencils.
Okay.
And I held his collar and I was hitting him in the head, and he held like Scorpion off Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
He had this fist back like ready, but he never touched me once. And I was behaving like an animal because I was just so frustrated with my whole life, really.
So he kicked you out at 17, going on 17. Yeah. Can you explain where you ended up and what that household was like?
A really nice church minister, but he took me under his wing and with his family.
Were you religious as well?
No. He knew me through my school. He used to help the bad kids get back on the books, and he had a bit of a past too, where he could relate to the kids from the wrong side of the tracks. He understood where they were coming from and didn't just follow standard operating procedure. Yeah, he saw I was in a really hard situation and just offered to let me live with him and his family. Can
you give us a little bit more detail about this hard situation? You're growing up in South Auckland, which is one of the rougher parts of New Zealand.
Yeah, there's like lots of gangs in South Auckland. When I was growing up, there's the Black Power and the Mongrel Mob were the main two. If you're not part of a gang, you're sort of vulnerable. So even if you're not part of a gang, people hang out in large crews. They might not have a patch to represent them, but they're like the boys. And then if you want to hang with the boys and all of a sudden they start doing something stupid, if you're not doing it with them, you sort of get exiled from the group, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So my guys are probably the most mellow dudes that you could hang with, but still up to idiotic things, always getting in trouble. It never really felt right. It was just like I was so angry I didn't really care. Like I was like, we were very poor growing up, didn't have a lot of stuff. Not heaps poor, but like, live in a caravan park here and there, and always had a loving home though. I just couldn't see it. I had too many frustrations inside, hanging out with the wrong people. You sort of lose sight of what's good for you and start thinking more selfishly. And I guess I'd look at like my parents and go like, oh, I'd be a millionaire by now, like you guys can't get it together and therefore I'm suffering. You know what I mean? Like It's having no idea about how hard it is to actually cut it in the real world. My dad's working 3 jobs to support the family and stuff, and I got no respect because all I see is a dude that's not there, Yeah.
That's a child's perception, though, isn't it? It's fairly limited, but that's true for all children.
I look back at it now and realise how stupid I was. But at the time, it was just like emotion, no logic.
Sure. And when you know better, you do better, but you didn't know better back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to moving in with the pastor? And he had a son who became your friend. Can you introduce us to him?
A lot of the Polynesian kids have like strong connections with all their cousins and sisters and brothers, so they hang out in big groups, and there's a lot of love in there, but I was sort of like, I look like one of them, but I couldn't integrate with them. I didn't understand their culture properly. But because I didn't have the same cultural upbringing as them, I was sort of like separated from the group. And then I was like, it was like the opposite of Where's Wally, you know, I looked like the large Polly in the white group sort of thing. So,
because your stepfather was white.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how you ended up being separated from the Polynesian culture?
Yeah, because my mum was white as well. And so I was raised like full white, didn't really get what was going on there. And when I met this dude, he had like a Māori background, and he sort of took me under his wing, so to speak. It was the first time I felt like I really had an older brother connection. Like he told me just little things like about grooming and stuff. Like he told me that if I used an old toothbrush to brush my eyebrows all in one direction,
that
it would look better.
Does it look better? I want to try that.
100%, brother.
I can tell you've done it before you've come into the studio.
Exactly.
Okay. So this sounds like, so he's introducing you into the world of being an adult, girls and grooming and Polynesian culture. Is that, or is there more to him? What else is he sharing with you?
Well, he's just like, they come across as richer, they're nicer to each other. It's just everything across the board that you would tick off on a list of good things in your life. He was macking it.
So you must
compared
have
to me.
Really looked up to him.
Oh, yeah, man.
How long did you know him for?
Wouldn't have been long, bro. Maybe like a couple years before he passed on.
Can you take us into that day and what happened?
The night before, he had been chatting to me about wanting to talk and stuff, because we always used to talk at night about, you know, teenage guy things, going through hormonal time, the girls we liked and stuff. And I said I got exams tomorrow, and I was trying to better myself, you know, new family, getting a new start, you know, wanted to do good with my grades and stuff. And I didn't know how important it was. I just thought it was another, you know, late night chat. And then when we came home from school, he was in the room, and
he'd taken his own life.
Yeah, he hung himself, and it was pretty full on, and I sort of like, it was like something in my head sort of snapped. I couldn't really deal with it, and it takes a while to establish when somebody's actually dead as well. Like when you get there, you still think you can save them and stuff, you know, when you find them.
And you tried to?
Yeah, we tried to resuscitate and stuff, and there's this real creepy thing that a body does when you're trying to resuscitate them. Like the wind still sounds like they got something in them, because they're still alive a little bit, because when you push down on the chest, the exhale, it sounds. Yeah. Keep going, you know. And
in your head, you must have been thinking, people have told me these stories, he's going to be okay, he's going to be okay, he's going to be all right, because you so want that to be true.
Yeah, we all didn't really accept it for longer than logical.
Yeah.
And then
that's what shock does to you.
I just wasn't in my own body.
Disbelief and dissociation.
Yeah, like I didn't really break down and cry like I should, like I felt like I should, until months later. At the time, on the day, I actually went down and into the lounge room, and I turned on the TV and zoned out into cartoons. And I feel so, same thing again, you know, so stupid. How disrespectful can you be?
A lot of people are ashamed of their own response in the face of trauma. A lot of people I talk to think about how they handled something very traumatic, and they feel shame about it. They feel bad about it. They judge themselves for it. Knowing that that's so common tells us something about what trauma does to your brain and to your body in the situation. It sounds like you just shut down. You went numb.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling anything, even at the funeral. I didn't really... It was like I was behaving like he wasn't my hero. You know what I mean? Like,
but he was your hero.
Yeah.
He was your hero, and you found him, and he was gone. And when your system, you didn't choose it, it was automatic. You shut down all that intense emotion that you're now feeling as you talk to us. It just goes to show what happened was it was so much that it was too much to bear. So in order to bear the unbearable, you don't feel any of it. You don't feel anything. And then you feel bad about that later because you think, what does that mean? Does that mean I didn't love him and care about him? Not at all. You cared about him and loved him and looked up to him so much that you couldn't bear it.
It was kind of like nothing, like even like toast didn't taste the same, you know what I mean? Like it's like the colour went out of life for a while.
All of your feelings shut down and your senses even can shut down.
Yeah. And so like I never felt anything for months. Then I crashed and I started feeling like horrible and crying and stuff, and just to myself. And by this stage, everybody else has sort of like had their mourning phase with the heavy healing part, and they've all been together and stuff, and hugs and, you know, chatting and stuff. And I feel like I'm like the late to the party, you know what I mean? Like it's like if I start bringing up this stuff now when everybody's just finally starting to, you know.
But that's how grief goes. There's no formula or timeline for grief. Everybody's grief is different.
I was at a real low point, and I was sort of, it's kind of catchy, you know, suicide. The thoughts go through your head, you know, well, he was so much better than me in everything. What's the worth of mine? I guess if somebody else throws out their Porsche, it makes you question your Toyota Starlet, you know, like it's...
Yeah.
And so I was having like bad thoughts and stuff, going for a really rough time, and my mates, you know, my young mates want to take me out to a party and sort of get over it, you know, drag me out of the hole. When we went there, and I just want to precursor this by saying, like, I don't want to encourage anybody to do this. This was highly risky behaviour, and I'm not saying it's what you should do. I'm just saying my truth, my story. So I was at this party, and some of these dudes are taking LSD trips, and I'm always pretty precautious dude, you know, even when I was younger, you know, 16, 17, I only took a half. And while these guys are partying and stuff, I started feeling something inside. I didn't know what it was, never done any of this sort of shit before. And being around people just wasn't the right place for me at that time. So I shot off from this party, and there was a big oval, and I sort of laid down in the oval. And it's New Zealand, so it's soaking wet and freezing cold.
Yes.
But I just didn't give a crap. I was just like, nah, something needs to be done right now. Lie down. And so I lied down next to the pole, looking at the stars, and it was like my mind was like a computer screen shutting down windows. You know when you shut down enough windows so it starts operating at a normal speed, sort of thing? Mm-hmm. It was like I was shutting down every single window, and I was solely focusing on this feeling. And I don't know how long I was there for, like maybe 3 hours or something. But afterwards, when I got up, I can only liken it to like when you wake up from a dream and you feel good, but you don't know why. It was kind of like I'd given myself permission, you know, like, hey, you're an idiot, but you're not as bad as you think you are.
It helped you access your feelings. It helped you access your emotions, which had been frozen. That's one way of saying it.
Yeah.
And because you lay there and you said you just focused on these feelings that were inside of you.
Yeah.
And in a way, doing that thaws them out. So you were able to let them move through you, and when feelings move through us, they can move out of us as well. They can be released or processed.
Yeah.
And so much of trauma and post-traumatic stress responses and disorders is because the stress response in our body, which was so overwhelming to our nervous system at the time, gets trapped in the body. So we need to find a way. We can't just think our way out of it.
Yeah.
So even though my job is to talk to people, a lot of the time I'm helping them feel what's there to be felt, their sensations, their emotions, get into their body, get into their breathing. So to deal with the post-traumatic stress responses, we need to take a whole body approach. And then to be able to make sense of what happened, so that initial response of overwhelm and self-blame and self-judgment can be replaced with, I didn't know. If I'd known, of course I would have done something differently. You know, you've got to be able to go back and integrate all the different parts of the experience in a way that's logical, that makes sense. So we've got to both process the emotions that are trapped in our body and process the story itself.
And like, I didn't have access to, like, therapist or something, you know. I'm South Auckland hood boy, you know. Closest we got to that is like actually, we don't have anything.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, we laugh about it, but that's the real awful price of poverty, isn't it? People don't get access to this kind of help that they really need, especially in places like South Auckland where it happens more pain happens.
Man, that's the main reason why I thought I'd come on here and not worry about looking like an egg, you know, like, because I thought if some dude's going through something and they can't afford the help, but they hear the show and might hear your advice on how to feel, how to think about it in a different way, I thought, oh, that's worth a bit of shame.
Yes. Aaron, that makes me wonder whether, because you were raised in South Auckland and you said you had to be tough there, they didn't like weakness if you're in one of these gangs or even an associate, did that make it harder to feel because of the culture you'd been raised in?
Oh, you definitely don't, like, cry in South Auckland.
Or talk about your feelings.
Oh, no. They have this thing called kura hard if you come where I'm from, because it's papa kura, and if you're not hard, then get out. And I pretty much kicked myself out for being too soft, man. I'm not hard enough for that
So
place.
those cultures really don't work for a lot of people at some level, but obviously they are like that for a reason. They've had to survive a lot of hardship.
Yeah, and like now with my kids and stuff, my South Auckland survival strategies are like idiotic and not like...
Not appropriate anymore?
Yeah, they're not this... Like, I was telling my kids, like, I was like, get your shoes inside. You don't know if they're going to get stolen. And then they're like, Dad, they've been out there for 3 weeks. I'm like, oh, but they're Nikes, like, aren't they? You know, like,
yes.
Or like one of them was swapping one of those ushi things at school with another kid.
Yeah.
So you did hand to hand, right? And that's where like both of you hold on to the other one's thing and then you release at the same time.
Simultaneous.
Yeah, exactly, because otherwise they might get off with your trade.
Yeah.
Like, no, Dad, we go to private school. They don't care. I'm like, oh,
That's
okay.
so interesting, though, because that's how our past is stored in our system, right? We know we're in the here and now and it's different from before, but there's a way in which it feels like it's still back then. You know, like there's a weird level at which we don't know that was then, this is now, it's different. We kind of go back to the past sometimes in our automatic reactions to things.
Oh, definitely. Like, if I'm walking down the street at night, I automatically know how many people are behind me and approximately how big they are, depending on the size of shoes that they're wearing and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm automatically looking in the reflection of windows. Like, these are just natural features that are inbuilt in you, because you got to know whether or not you got to hit the road or if you're going to turn around and fight.
Very profoundly conditioned in you, but it sounds like you're pretty good at noticing them now, and sometimes you're able to say, oh, it's different now.
I still feel a bit like one of those vets that's stuck in the war sometimes. Because I still stayed there for a while, but then when I got older, things were going downhill in my hometown, you know, and people were having a lot of infighting and stuff, and I was like, I don't want to be around there. And I've been told that it's nowhere near as bad. It was kind of like I lived there during the medieval era or something, you know, like Once Were Warriors is like a taste.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like a cheese and cracker version, man.
Wow.
It spun me in the other direction. I've taken sort of a bit of a stance with my life since all this stuff happened, that zero violence. Like, I'm a comic, and verbally I've got a pretty sharp tongue when it comes to rebuttals. You know, I'm pretty quick, but if I can see a situation is going to flare and somebody's having a go at me, I'll just walk away with that chin on. You know, I'll take that one on the cheek to ensure there's no the verbal doesn't escalate to physical violence. And so there's been many times where I've walked away looking like a complete idiot, but it sort of makes me proud.
I think this is really nerdy. This is going to sound really nerdy. Okay,
Nerd away.
I just want to talk about something called polyvagal theory, which is a nerdy neuroscience theory that's pretty much proven now, although, of course, the brain and nervous system is super complex. But basically it says that there's 3 branches of our nervous system that are responsible for our responses to the environment around us, to our situations. The first one is a technical name of the ventral vagus system. And this is a response in us that makes us feel connected to each other and feel relaxed. And that's the state that we should hopefully be in when we are sitting around eating food together, laughing and talking. So safe and social. Then our nervous system, if it needs to, will ramp up into the sympathetic nervous system branch. And that will give us the fight, flight and puff up response, where we kind of need that energy to run away from the bear or, have the fight, take action to protect ourselves or solve the problem. So that's obviously a lot of adrenaline. We're very activated, very energized. And if we become extremely stressed, but there's nothing we can do, which is the case of finding somebody you love, you find them. They've taken their own life and you find them. And the overwhelming powerlessness and helplessness, it can push you into the third branch of our nervous system, which is called the dorsal vagus system. And what it does is it just shuts us down. It shuts down our emotions, it shuts down pain, it shuts down our senses. And it's evolved, they say, to help us diminish the amount of pain we might feel if we're about to die. That's pretty dramatic, but it actually can kick in fully or partially when we feel like it's hopeless. We don't know what to do. So a friend of mine was chased by a hippo in Africa, and she said she fell as she was running. She had all that sympathetic nervous system energy. She's running through the grass. The hippo was chasing her. She told me the story. And then she tripped in the grass, and then she immediately felt very relaxed, like she was in a dream. What had happened is her dorsal ventral vagus system had kicked in, and she just felt nothing. She wasn't afraid. She just thought she was going to die. And then she lay there in this dreamlike state where she wasn't feeling much. And eventually she realized the hippo isn't coming and I'm not going to die. And eventually she got up, and obviously the hippo had just given up. And then she went back into the sympathetic nervous, that second one, and felt all shaky and trembly and started crying and having all of that stress response. And eventually she went back into her relaxed, safe and social mode. But I just wanted to tell that story just to illustrate how our nervous system will take us on this journey. And it sounds like this is what happened to you. You probably lived with a fair bit of chronic stress growing up because, like you said, you were always kind of vigilant, looking around you to see if you were under threat.
Yeah.
But then this experience of finding your friend who'd taken his own life tipped you over into that third state that I talked about, where
That makes
everything
sense, yeah.
shuts down. But eventually you came out of that as well.
That's very interesting because most of us never experience that third state. So it's not written in our books and films. It's just not there as a state. We know about getting fight or flight. We know about the having
Although
friends.
we do talk about being scared stiff or frozen with fear.
Yeah, I guess. And sometimes someone goes catatonic or something.
Anyone who's had trauma has probably experienced
Yeah.
that freeze state.
But the fact is, like Aaron wasn't familiar with that numbness, I think is partly
Yeah.
cultural, is that there's not widespread knowledge of this numbness, what it really is.
Yep.
Yeah, because people just go straight from, like, it happened to wailing, crying, like, and that for me was like, I was watching them go through this healing process, and I felt like an absolute ass.
Were they all mostly Polynesian around him?
Yeah, a lot of Polynesian, multi-Polynesian.
So were they going through a ritual process of grief? Like after 3 days this happens, after 7 days this happens?
No, I just meant like the standard emotions that you'd see like on movies or you know what you think happens in real life, and I've seen some people that go through those standard processes, but I'd never heard about this nervous system thing, and I just thought, oh, maybe I'm broken. You know, like there's something wrong with me.
I think the same thing when I don't feel the appropriate feeling. Maybe I'm a psychopath inside.
And the thing to know is we've all got different nervous systems genetically.
Yeah.
Some people have really sensitive nervous systems. The highly sensitive people, maybe you're one of those. You know, some people have hardier, more robust nervous systems. But, I mean, these three states apply to all of us. But, of course, it's going to take different experiences to, you know, trigger these changes in state. Also, I'd like to say there are mixed states. You know, you can be a little bit safe and social and calm, but another part of you can be in fight or flight and panic. So they call that mixed state. So you can be kind of a bit numb and shut down and then go back into your intense emotions and then go back to being numb again. So it's not as straightforward as, it's not black and white. So one of the things in healing from traumatic experiences is titrating, which means bit by bit, your way back through all of the pain and stress and distress so you can come back to a state of relative calm.
It really annoys me that I don't have enough self-control to be able to talk about it now without feeling
getting emotional,
that teary up, and my voice going on, it's like I hate that it's still got that much control over me. Because, like I said, I practice going through my story and stuff so that I wouldn't do that. And
I really understand that, Aaron, but I get it because I have also experienced feeling ashamed of intense emotion and tears. But I just want to remind you that, first of all, and everybody, there's no shame in grief or in sadness or in strong emotion. And what you think other people might think of you when you're crying or grieving is not what they're thinking. Do you know? It actually, we're evolved to feel empathy when we see somebody upset and cry. The person crying feels shame and embarrassment, and the people around them, if they're caring, they are just feeling empathy.
See, in Papakura, we don't have empathy. We just punch each other in the arm and give them a beer. Harden up, bro.
Harden up. A beer or some concrete.
Yeah, exactly. There's... But I was blessed with some really good friends growing up and stuff, and we never talked about this stuff ever.
At all.
Never.
Yeah.
And they had stuff like, one of my best mates had his mum die. One of my other best mates had a brother also committed suicide. And the closest we come to talking about it on is if one of us speaks about it on Facebook, we're like, thinking of you. But it's so hard to bring up those topics in situations where everybody is hardened emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of the hardest things I come across in my clinical practice are sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse, and suicide, because these affect all the people around, and it just has this ripple effect, and people feel guilt and people feel shame and people question themselves and they doubt and they say, if only, and it just affects so many people. So I'm saying that to normalise how hard it's been for you.
I got some good advice from one of my friends. He said, never use a permanent solution to a short-term problem, because that's a permanent solution to something that might, no matter what's going on in your life, it might change. There's a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know, with everything. I'm not a qualified doctor.
No, I think that's a great saying. I've seen that around too.
And I think because he, like I said, lovely guy, and if he had seen the damage, it was like he felt so bad with his life at the time that he felt he had to do that. It didn't get rid of that badness. It just passed it on to other people.
Yeah. Yep, the pain gets transferred to others.
Yeah, the family, if he had seen the damage that it did emotionally to his loved ones, I don't think he would have made the choice. If only people could have a chance to be a fly on the wall at their own funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you still holding on to from those childhood experiences?
I don't think I've pretty much let go of anything, man. Like I said, Kura is ingrained in me, and all I've really done is learn how to cope with them better, I think. Whenever anybody says, Aaron, I need to talk, I don't give a shit if it's 2 a.m., I'm like, brr, brr,
Yeah.
Like, it taught me that, and that stays with me forever, and it taught me how to judge, when you're in danger.
Yes.
And that's, I might be over precautious, but I got a clean record, all my limbs, no stab wounds. I'm doing pretty well. I got like a ace. That's like a strike in Papakura if you go without stab wounds. Lost a couple of teeth to fights, but that's unnecessary mechanisms. I can still chew.
Aaron and Rachel, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Thanks, Ashwin.
On ABC Radio, this was Help Me, I'm a Comedian. If the conversation today has made you want to talk to someone, Lifeline provides 24-hour crisis counselling. Their number is 13 11 14, or you can find other resources at beyondblue.org.au. Alternatively, you can speak to your GP now and arrange Medicare-supported sessions with a psychologist. You can find this and all of our other interviews on the ABC Radio website, abc.net.au/radio/programs/editor's choice. I'm Ashwin Segkar. See you next week.